Let's do a bunch of examples here. But before we do that, let's just summarize our results. If we multiply a positive and a positive, we get a positive number back. A negative and a negative, that's a positive, right? You multiply two numbers with the same sign, positives, negatives, you get a positive result. And if you take a positive times a negative, that's going to result in a negative, or a negative times a positive. That's going to result in a negative. So two numbers with opposite signs gives you a negative result. Now let's just do a whole bunch of problems here. How about first of all we try this? What if we tried negative 3 times negative 9? So we're multiplying two numbers with the same sign, so we know the result's going to be positive. And if we think back to our rule, we're going to multiply the absolute values, 3 and 9. 3 times 9 is 27, and the result is positive. So we're going to conclude that that is 27. Here's number 2. Actually, why don't you try this one here? So I'll write down negative 5 times negative 2. Why don't you pause it and see what you get? So I'm thinking we're multiplying two numbers with the same sign, so the result's going to be positive. And the absolute values, well, we get 5 and 2. 5 times 2 is a 10, so the result here is going to be positive 10. How about this one? For number 3, we multiply, say, positive 3 and negative 12. So we're going to have a positive times a negative, so the result is going to be negative. And if we multiply their absolute values, right, 3 times 12, that's 36. So we'll get negative 36 here. So for number 4, why don't you try number 4, and let's write this one as, say, negative 7 times positive 6. So give this a try. Maybe pause the video, and then I'll come back and show you what I got and see if we get the same thing. So I'm thinking we got a negative times a positive, so we got opposite signs. The result's going to be negative, so it's going to be negative. And the absolute values, 7 and 6, that's going to give us a 42. So we'll get negative 42 here. So for number 5, why don't we put a few things together? How about if we tried something like this? 8 minus negative 3. We haven't done this one for a while. So just to remind us, we're going to change subtraction to addition of the opposite. So it's going to be 8 plus, and the opposite of negative 3 is 3. So we're going to get 11 out of this, just to remind ourselves. So why don't we try this one here? Let's go with 4 minus negative 12. See what you get there. So let's see. We'll get 4 plus, right? Change subtraction to addition. Subtraction gets changed to addition. Now, of the opposite of negative 12 is 12. Add these two numbers, we get 16. I'll put those in squares here. Okay, let's do a couple more multiplications. So in number 7, how about if we look at 3 times the quantity 4 minus 6. So let's work in these parentheses first. So this is going to be 3 times, now 4 minus 6 is negative 2. 3 times negative 2, we got opposite signs, so it's going to be negative. 3 times 2 is 6, so we'll get negative 6 out of this one. Why don't you try number 8 here? Let's go with negative 3, and then multiply this by 1 minus 6. See what you get for that one. I'll do it in a minute, see if we match. So I think we're going to get negative 3, and then 1 minus 6 is negative 5. And then we're multiplying two numbers with the same sign, right? They're both negatives. So this is going to result in a positive number. 3 times 5 is 15. Now for problem number 9, what if we went with negative 8, and then let's put parentheses, 4 minus 12, and close it. And then we'll put a plus 2. We'll just make them a little bit bigger. So we'll work inside here first, and we're going to get negative 8, 4 minus 12. Their absolute values are 4 and 12. Subtract the smaller from the larger, so 4 gets subtracted from 12. 12 minus 4 is 8, but the number with the larger absolute value is at 12, and it's negative. So this is going to be negative 8 and then plus 2. And now, by the order of operations, you multiply first. 64, you think? Two numbers with the same sign, right? They're both negative, so we'll get a positive, and then plus 2. That's going to give us a 66. Say for number 10, we have negative 1 times 4 plus 2. So working in the parentheses, we're going to get negative 1 times 6. And then we've got two numbers with opposite signs, right? A negative and a positive. So the result will be negative. So we'll get negative 6 Okay, now let's try this. In number 11, what if we just wrote this? Negative the quantity, say 8 plus 3. So the difference here between 10 and 11, we actually wrote the 1. Here that we didn't write the 1, but it's understood. We have negative 1 times this. So when you see this, it's actually negative 1 times 8 plus 3. It's going to be negative 1 times 11, which is negative 11. Or you can think of this like this. This negative sign here says, I want the opposite. That can be an opposite sign or a negative sign. I'm going to think of it as an opposite. I want the opposite of that sum. Well, that sum is 11. So I might think of this as the opposite of 11, and we denote that by the opposite of 11 with that negative 11.